Hello there reason people, PoohBear here and welcome to my channel, and today we're going to be looking at how we can get more precise values from knobs. There's actually quite a few values that we can get, say, from a knob that you may not be able to get to from using a normal mouse. Now, for those who don't know, obviously in preferences there's this mouse knob range. I always have mine set to very precise, so when I use my shift key I can get to much more granular level when we're actually moving the mouse over a knob, but they can be even finer level inside a knob. So I'm going to use the CV8X4 just purely as a little test thing. Now we have this simple tool tip up, and obviously, and I click and I move a mouse, you can see it going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now this is actually an integer number, which is actually really moving and nothing else. So if we actually click on this one, which happens to be wired up to this meter here, and if you watch the numbers go up, well, here's number 1, and you can see it's saying 0.0078. In fact, if you looked very carefully, you probably saw it flicker. There we go, you see it flicker. So I'm going to move it ever so slowly, and there we go. It's still saying 0, but actually we've changed the voltage. This is like, you could say this is like 0.5 of a volt, and then we're going to push it up to 1, so we're now on 1 volt. If I push it again a little bit higher, this is like 1.5, and so on. Now I can bring this down, and I can actually hold my shift key down now on my keyboard, and as I push it up you can see it's gone to 0.0009, and then we can go up in like nearly 0.001 of the volt. But as you can see, we're going up, and then obviously when we get from there we go, 3.9 to 4.8, it jumps to 1, and the reason being is it's doing a bit of a round up in the background, because don't forget, you're probably looking at this integer value, and this integer value is obviously slightly different. Yeah, it's an integer value to what's actually going down here. So you might be looking at the numbers going, that's not really a round, but that's how it's doing in the background. It'd be doing its own little round sort of stuff. So yeah, so we got that for starters, and we can actually fine tune even this knob here even finer, so we can get an even finer control on it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hold down my Alt key, and I think this might be Option on the Mac, and I've just clicked it, so I've created myself an automation lane down here. I'm just going to put myself a little bit of automation in. There it is. In fact, I'm not going to even actually put anything actually in it, but by double click on it, we've got this here, this 0 here. And now what I can actually do is I can actually type in here, and sometimes you can type in certain values, and on some devices you might be thinking, hey, I'm going to type in this specific value, and it just won't allow you to do it, and it won't. It's just the way them devices are absolutely scaled. So in this one here, I can actually type in 0.001, say for instance. It's actually accepted it. You can't actually see anything on here. I need to go and pull up a bigger monitor, meter for you to see that. So let me just make this a little bit smaller. Let's go 0.1. Did I say 0.01 last time? No, it still isn't showing it. This meter's just too small. So I was going to come into, let me just zoom out and put up a bigger meter for us to look at. Let's keep that open. So there's our value that we're actually pumping out. So I'm going to come down here again, double click on this, and I'm going to put this time 0.0001, and you're going to watch this number up here change. Yeah. So we're so low down, as you can see all the zeros, it's way below this meter, so this meter is just not able to show what's going on. But the fact is, it's still showing 0 here, but you know, obviously if I was to put 0.5 in here, we're now showing up the value, because obviously it's in that range. And that's, remember what I said earlier when we're scrolling it just with the mouse only, I said that'd be 0.5, and there you go, 39.5. So we can get very specific values by typing things in here. Now it could be, if you do type a value in here, so let's say I said, oh, I'm going to have 65.5 in here. Fine, I've got 65.5 in here. What I'd actually do then, personally, I would say to you, sorry, I need to zoom in here, don't let me zoom in. I would actually say add a label to the clip, and I'd then put a note in here to say to myself, oh yeah, this was nearly 65.5 or whatever, and then I know now that when I'm actually inside here, that 65 really is 65.5 or something. So just put yourself a note so you can just reference it and you don't get lost. Now, we can actually take this one step further, and this is more, it says this is more, this is like when we're using MIDI controllers, obviously, and we're controlling things within reason, we're going to get digital stepping because that's what the controllers do. They're sending out a very fixed range from 0 to 127, so it's very digitally stepped. However, once we record that into reason and we play it back, it's not digitally stepped anymore. And I've heard some people kind of say, yes, it is, and it was 100% isn't. And you know it isn't, and I'm pretty sure these people do know it's not really. So what I'm going to put in here, I'm going to put myself a little bit of automation here, and I'm also going to put myself a little bit of automation here. And what I'm actually going to do on this one here, I'm going to put in 0. So I've actually just typed in 0. Sorry, it's all a little bit small. Can I zoom in a little bit more? Oh yeah, I can zoom in a little bit more. And then on this one here, he says, let's just click it. I'm going to put in here. No, I just want to put in 0.1. So just put in 0.1. So it's 0.1 here and 0 here. And this is over a 2-second gap. Now, what we can do with my meters over here, and by the way this is simply wired up, and it is a very, very simple wire up, he says. Just quickly flip around to the back of the rack if I can. So I'm coming out the CV8X4, I'm going into this CV to audio converter, I'm then going into voltage modular. So the audio's coming in here. It's a 5-volt range, it's automatically converted when it comes to voltage modular. So Reason automatically converts a 1 volt to a 5 volt. We're then going to take that 5 volt and convert it back to a 1 volt over an analog range, and that's going to give us our true figure. So this figure here would actually marry up really what's going on in here. It just shows it a lot better because that's actually rounded this particular figure up. So there's actually the same figure. So what we're going to do now is we're going to run this, and you're going to see, so we're going to go from 0.1 to a 0, and you can see we've only got 2 automation points in here, but let's see how many times we're going to get triggered. And this big counter is going to count how many times the CV signal is going to change. And this is a rolling meter, so we're not going to see all the changes because there's going to be quite a few. You can have a guess how many changes there are going to be just between this 2-second gap. But you see the very tiny numbers. That's what the whole point of this is. So I'm just going to click on play, he says, down here. Let it run, and then we're going to stop it. Right, cool. We've actually had 3,000 changes. So this is where we're saying, hey, once we've recorded in, I could have only moved my controller, just that little notch, and that could have recorded that, and that could have recorded that. But when we play back, we get 3,000 changes. And that's how many's coming out. And in fact, this is how smaller voltage we are actually changing this by. And in fact, on here, I've got this little time thing. So if I click on the time, hey, there's our 64 samples. So every 64, the value's changing, which we say. We pick up a piece of CV in Reason every 64 samples. We can see the result here. You might see loads of zeros here, but it's not really zeros, is it? Because if we come here, it's 0, blah, blah, blah. It's just that scaling so small. So, yes. Once we've recorded anything from a MIDI controller, we don't have to worry about digital stepping. Yeah. Okay, you could argue there's digital stepping always with a digital machine. Of course there is, but it's that so tiny, you're never going to hear it. The human being's not going to hear it. It's like anything. Once we put it into the mix and put anything else, can you hear it? No, it's not anything to worry about. So it's not like you're live on the stage. So that's where you worry about digital stepping really, is when you're playing live, you can really do hear it when you start playing around with filters and that. But once you've actually recorded it, or while you're recording it, you might hear it, but on playback, no, you will not hear it. So anyway, the main thing to take away from this is the fact that you can actually come in here and you can obviously type in very specific values into here, and yeah, if you can't dial it in manually. As I say, 99.9% of the time, I find knobs are absolutely fine, especially when I use my shift key, I can actually dial it in. Now, totally separate, but as I'm here playing around with this sort of stuff, I thought I'd go over here and actually have a little play around with Janitor. Now, one of the things about Janitor, now Janitor's a good one, like with this scaling knob. So let's have a quick look at this scaling knob. What I want to do with that particular scaling knob, and here it is here, and I'll zoom in, let me just zoom in, there we go. Now, a real nice scale to do would be 0.5. That's something, and in fact it's not taking it, let's make sure it's highlighted. 0.5, that is something what we want. It's not even taking it again. 0.5, good, definitely typed in 0.5. it will not accept 0.5. It has to go up, and if you try and go a little bit below, like 4.9 or whatever, it will jump down, and this is the nearest number it can ever get to. So on that particular device, it's a real pain. However, on this particular device, what we can actually do, we can get away with, I'm just going to clear out the automation. I'm going to set this actually down to 0. Let's set this to 0. There he says. I'll find it. Oh, see, I can't even do that myself. I might have to go into, I'm going to have to edit the automation, go into the automation and set it to 0 from here. It's probably because I've been playing around with it. And the other thing is what you might find with some controls, like this control here. So if I push it all the way up to 2 volts and then push it back, I might get 0. Nah, it's because I've had to play around with it. Let's have a shift down. Can I get it with the shift? Yay, there we go. We set it to 0. I can then use something like the RVL, because the RVL's got some nice little controls on it, and I can obviously, we've got some little thousandths and all the rest of it, and I can obviously set this to something like, this would be this one here. If I set that to like 0.5, put that as an, yeah, that's good enough. And I can take that and I can push that into the scaling. And now this is now scaled this perfectly at 0.5. So I'm using this RVL to actually scale that for us. So we have to set that to 0. We can also do other scalings with this. This is really powerful. If I was to pull this down, say, and I was to push this up just to even put that to 0.1, now anything we push through that is really going to be scaled down into minute figures. So if you ever wanted very, 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 very small voltages to use, this is the way to do it. But anyway, as I said, this is a bit of a side issue. And it was just a side thing I sort of looking at when I was playing around. I thought it could be handy for some people to know about, or they might not realise that you can do that with Janitor. So it's a nice little trick I do quite a bit. But the main point is, as I say, we can come in here. We can actually type in a figure. Right, I'm definitely waffling. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.